Welcome to the Round Table. I am Jennifer Eller, and today I have with me my co-host Mike Hill, our producer Nick Wilson, and our special guest today is Krista Rohrabaugh.
Yay.
Hello, Krista.
You even said it right. Like, I could never say that right. That's
How do you say your name?
Huh?
How do you
Krista.
say? Oh, it's Krista.
I'm not trying to say her last name. Yeah.
Rohrabaugh.
Yeah, it just would never happen.
That is so funny.
I would never try to say her last name.
At least you're
Didn't
honest
you ever
about
have
it.
That? Like, we were having this conversation at lunch today. I went to lunch with Jeremy, and so he was talking about his short-term memory loss, and he says, like, because his mom did drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's like, I don't think my mom did drugs, but I think I have that too. Like, I'll go up and see somebody at church I've known for years and be like, hey.
Hello.
What's up, Chief?
Okay, I hate to tell you.
I don't remember your name. I should remember your name.
We're 50. It happens.
Is that what
No, it
happens?
is,
You lose your
seriously.
short-term
I'm
memory?
Yeah, I'm
37
getting there.
and that happens to
You
me.
have some short-term stuff like that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't feel so bad then. 'cause-
No, just age. It's age.
age.
It is, seriously.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, I'll just
it's
keep
age.
blaming it on that.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So are you a book reader, movie watcher, Netflix?
I definitely don't read anything other than the Bible.
Oh,
I
wow.
am not a reader. I don't like to read.
Okay.
I will read something 10 times,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I don't know what I just read. I
Yeah,
have to read it again.
comprehension. Yeah,
No.
I have a hard time with that
Do
too.
you listen to books ever?
No. Nope. Nope.
No, that's all
I
right.
don't.
Some of us like to listen to books, but Jennifer
Yeah.
says it's not real reading. But
It's just.
It's not reading, is
never
it?
been- No, it's not reading. You're
yeah, see?
listening.
thanks, Krista.
Yeah. And you're a mom of twins.
Yes.
So I thought, what is the quirkiest thing or the strangest thing or just something about that the twins have done? Being I don't know what that twin world is like. So
Do you dress them alike? Did you dress them alike?
I think there was one outfit that was like neutral because boy, girl, how do you
Yeah.
really? And we did one year for Easter. Her dress matched his little suit.
Okay.
Like it had like some of the same colors in it, but no, I was never dress them alike. I got asked, I don't know how many times if they were identical.
and they're not.
I'm like, no. Oh well, we just didn't know. And I'm like,
Did you look?
it's a boy and a girl. And they're like, well, they could, there's identical and fraternal. I'm like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a boy and a girl. That's
They're not the same.
they have
That
different
tell you
parts.
anything?
They
Yeah,
can't
it'd
be
be
identical.
Right.
No, they're not.
Yeah. So no crazy stories with raising twins.
Oh, they're best buddies.
Are they?
Yeah, they get along for the most part. As they're getting older, they just turned 9. Marley's sass is coming out, and Micah is just the energy. That kid is just nonstop, bouncing off the walls. But they keep me busy, that's for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
But they're fun.
Yeah.
Their personalities and
Yeah. Did you ever want twins? There's some people who like, I want twins.
no,
No.
I actually didn't want any more kids
Okay.
at all. After the boys,
Okay.
I didn't want any more kids, and
did
I
you
was
forget how it
talked.
worked? Or?
I talked it. I was like, mine are just. The boys were older. Like, I don't want to start all over again. And I was talked into just one. He wanted just one. I'm like, okay, one more. And well, God bless me with 2.
Two.
There you go.
So it was a 2-for-1 deal. I got 2. So,
Yep.
but I wouldn't trade them for the world. They're fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So.
I always wanted twins.
Did you?
I did, because my mom was an identical twin. So I was like, isn't that how it works? Like, does it skip a gen? I don't remember how it works.
It
Sometimes
does.
it
It
can.
skips a generation, they
So
say.
I'm like, man, I hope I have twins, but no luck.
But if it's going to skip a generation, it would skip you.
No, I know. I was hoping it wouldn't.
Oh, you're hoping it wouldn't.
No,
okay.
I know. That was the
Okay.
idea. I was
Yeah.
hoping
Oh,
it wouldn't
yeah.
skip a
Yeah.
generation and that I
Yeah.
would be able to do it. But then when
Yeah.
we took in the Clark kids, it was like, I have 3 sets of twins. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
truly.
so then they had, that's kind of
Yeah.
like that. So,
Yep. Yep, they were. Yeah. So we're just going to kind of jump into your story because you've been an overcomer, to a lot of things in your life. And so, I'm just going to let you start telling your story.
Okay. Well, it's like, where do you even start? I was raised in a Christian home. We went to church faithfully every week. I was in youth group. I was involved in my youth group at the church we attended growing up. I did campus life through the school. My home life was good. I had a very supportive family, and I still have a very supportive family. I was 7, and I was molested by one of my mom's daycare kids. Never did I tell anybody about it until just the last year and a half. Have I even spoke of that happening? It was something that I feel like tucked away in my brain. Like, you know how they say your brain can
Yeah, shove it down, lock it up.
Yeah, that you almost forget about it. That's what I did with that. I got pregnant when I was 17, or when I was 16, had my son when I was 17, and he was born in May. So I had him in May. I graduated high school in June and turned 18 July 1st, and on July 10th I got married. So I got married 9 days after my 18th birthday, had a new baby, and moved out, and that's a lot. It was a whirlwind of my whole life just, flipped upside down. So I was a young mom trying to figure out life for my own self, but how to raise a kid and be a wife, and I'm still a kid on my own self, and it was a lot. My first marriage was rocky. He was in addiction. I didn't know it. I was kind of naive to those things. I was in high school. I did, some of the high school kid stuff, drink, smoke weed,
Right.
It's what I feel like a lot of high school kids do that, unfortunately. But I was very naive to full addiction and the deeper drugs. It got to a point we lost our home. Our cars were repossessed. We lost everything. That's what kind of threw my life into a spin of I moved out, I moved back, I moved out. We probably did that 14 times before I finally was like, we ended up getting divorced. I had my second son in between all of that.
So how old were you at this time?
I had Chandler when I was 22.
Okay.
So
Krista, was the addiction just with him? Did you get involved in? Yeah, I didn't think so. At that point, right?
Nope.
So it was just, and when you were in high school, and you meet him, and you guys are together, he could just hide it pretty well, and wouldn't have known kind of or did it start later on for him, the addiction?
No,
piece?
he was in it before.
Okay.
And I just didn't realize how deep it was.
Oh. You just thought it was more recreational type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The amounts of money that were being spent I was like,
Right.
He told me it was from snacks from work and tools, and
Right.
I'm like, well, you got to stop buying snacks. We have $0. We can't pay any bills. So,
And so how were, again, just to kind of give a perspective, how were, your mom and dad through this whole process? Like, what does that look like from a mom and dad standpoint? Because, I mean, there are some mom and dads that are going through that right now with their kids. Like, how were you supported? What helped you during, the 14 in and out times? And
So when I moved, my in and out times, I went to a friend's house.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's where I
Okay.
kind of moved in with a
Okay.
friend, and then we tried to make it work. And he did go to rehab, and he got sober, and he's still sober, and he's doing great, and I thank God for that. My family was supportive, but they weren't supportive in my leaving. They wanted me to fight, and I feel like I tried, but that trust was broken. And at that point in my life, I didn't really know how to gain it. I grew up in church, yes, but at that point, I didn't have a strong relationship with God. I was just trying to figure life out, like me being so young. And then at this point, I have 2 kids, and we've just lost everything. We're trying to scramble and find a house, a rental to move into, and me moving in and out of my friends as many times as I did, she had an addiction, and that's when my addiction kind of started then, is in between then, we got divorced, and in that time is when I met my second husband, and I went straight from that to that relationship. And him and I both were dabbling in stuff when we got together. Sadly, we were using when we got married. Like, we didn't even get married sober. That it got, I don't know where I want to go with this, where I'm at here.
well, can I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah.
So one of the questions I always ask is, this is a lot of people's story. They grow up, they're around good people, good family, grow up in a church. When I say good, like people that know that some of the things that are going on probably aren't the best. And so did you have people at the time that were surrounding you saying like, hey, probably not a great idea. Hey, you should probably go to church. Hey, you should probably work on your relationship. Or was it just like you're in a whole different scene? Because this is what I'm always trying to figure out. Like, once you leave the church scene, does the church people try to follow and help? Or is it just like, here's our scene, here's the church scene, and they never cross over?
No church scene people. No. I had my family that came to me like saying, what are you doing? And as I was living with her and dabbling in things, my kids were with my parents a lot because I was not, I feel like in my head, which was a very twisted way to think, I didn't have a childhood like because I had kids so young.
Yeah. Right.
And I thought in my head, I can do what I want to. That was stolen from me.
Right.
I can do what I want to. And my parents had my kids a lot, and the bars became a very big part of my life. Even on weekdays, you could find me at a bar.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, you grew up in a youth group, you were in Youth for Christ, you wonder where all those people go.
Yeah.
What happened, because I get it, your family's always going to be there, but what happens to all these other people that, they all couldn't be in the drug scene with you, so where were they? Did they just leave people out there that are going through, because it seems like, when people need rescued, there's not very many of us around.
Right.
you know, to be able to help with that process. And so, yeah, I was just curious if there's anybody from a friend standpoint, because I remember the days of praying with your parents, like, hey, you know, we have the kids, and like, let's take an opportunity to pray through this, because we know it's probably not going the best, but, you know, this is what we're hoping for. And,
Yeah.
you know, so like, where were friends to come and pull you out of, not even to pull, but to help?
Most
know?
all of my friends at that point in my life were all in addiction. They were already way deeper in than I was, so I just went right into it with them.
Was that so this isn't off the subject, but it just came to mind. Do you think that alcohol and weed, what people do in high school, is a gateway into deeper drugs, or is that not true? Like, I hear people talk about this. Like, it's easier then to go into the harder stuff if you're already doing.
I feel like it could be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I stuck with that for a long time, though, just the alcohol and the weed. And then I would stop it, you know. But once I started with the harder stuff, that's where it was game over.
Yeah, but what's the transition? Like, what makes a person? So for the people that are out there dabbling right now, because I guarantee you there's a lot of people listening that are smoking pot and drinking beer, whatever,
Yeah.
whiskey. What was the breaking point for you? Because and again, I've seen this in people's life. Like, yeah, it's recreational and you do all this, and then, but that once you, like, Josh said this to me in a driveway as he was giving me his kids. When I started heroin, he said, I've done every drug, every single drug known to mankind. Soon as the first injection of heroin, I would have given my kids away the next day to be able to keep doing this, you know. And I'm like, for him, it was like alcohol and weed, and then it went cocaine. You know, he was doing coke for a while, and then it was meth. But it was like, man, when it was heroin, there was no return, you know, from that. And I'm like, what? And I used to talk to him about this, like, what got there? And for him, it was, yeah, there's this for a while, and then coke wasn't enough, and then this wasn't enough, and then I finally found what was enough.
And it's that first time you do a specific thing, you constantly then are trying to chase that high. You'll never get that same high again, but you're constantly chasing it, because once your body starts getting used to doing it,
Right.
you don't ever get that high. So you're chasing it with other things, or doing more, or doing it more often. Just
Were you afraid? Like, to go from recreational drugs to the hard stuff?
So
Did you ever have a fear of?
yeah, no, actually I didn't. There was one time I was afraid, because I thought I was going to overdose, but I was able to wake back up and snap out of it and was okay. But it started with just like taking medicine, like, you know, like pain meds.
Right.
Taking pain meds, and then you start taking them, and then you take them, and then it's snowballs into, then you start snorting them.
Right.
And then that you're just not getting the high that you are chasing after. So it just leads you into you're chasing a high that you just can't get.
Right.
You know, it's weird. It does get you high, but it's never going to get you as high as it did the very first time.
And do you think that from a deception standpoint, because this is the thing I've always wondered, you've done this before? Like, you've shown pictures of what you were like in addiction to, you know, what you are today. And I've seen people like tell their story of, look at me and look at what I lost. Like, so I'm sitting here thinking, like, if I was in recreational drugs and I'm trying to make this decision, do I cross over? You know what I mean? Do I go from just doing recreational stuff to that? Like, there's so many of these stories out there today. I always wonder, what is that like? Like, is the deception that I'll never be that? Like, I'll never get that far. I'll
Yeah.
never lose that much. I'll never.
I I thought that I'd always told myself I would never put a needle in my arm, ever. That's one thing I will never do. And one day, when you're addicted, you get sick. So every day that's another thing. You're constantly trying to chase and find your drug. You got to drive
make you feel
here.
better.
Yeah, because if you don't have it, if you're addicted to it, I mean, it can be the very next morning and you're sick. So your whole day is spent trying to find and driving to wherever you got to drive to get something.
Yeah.
So how I went from my pill addiction to heroin, two people went to go get our pills that we were supposed to get. They got there. The dealer didn't have the pills. All he had was heroin. They show back up and tell me not to freak out. They throw the baggie on the table, and I'm like, well, what is that? I had never even seen heroin before in my life. And they told me it's an opiate. It's just a stronger one. You don't have to do as much. Just do a little bit. It'll make you feel better. And so I started out with heroin, snorting it. And then just one day, I was like, I'm gonna shoot it.
Yeah.
Because my best friend at the time was shooting it. And she argued and argued and argued. No, you're not. No, you're not. I'm telling you, once you start it, you'll never stop. I'm like, I had used a needle one time, but it had been a year and a half prior to that with just a pain pill. And I was like, I did it one time. I can do it one time with this. And she's like, I'm telling you, no, you can't. I was like, all right, well, I'm doing it, whether you like it or not. And she's like, okay, let me show you the right way. So you don't, because there's a whole science to doing it.
Right.
And she was right. It was that one time, and it was, I was addicted.
Yeah. And that's why, like, I get the argument today. So the argument today is, what's the big deal about smoking pot? Right? Like,
Yeah.
everybody's doing it. I mean, what's the big deal? And I'm just like, the only thing I would tell you is that those certain things make you bolder to do more. Some people can handle it. Some people can't. But at the end of the day, there is something about doing those things that embolden you to be able to do more or put you in positions to have opportunities to do more.
And I think there are people who can just stick to smoking.
Yeah.
But also, what's their backstory? Do they have trauma? Do they have, I'm going to kind of backtrack a little. In my first marriage, I was actually raped by my husband's best friend. And he told me that if I told anybody, he would kill me, and I full well believed him. Because he was my best friend's boyfriend at the time, and I had watched him put his work boots on and stomp on her face and crush her nose more than one time. I had watched him smash her head through glass windows, and I had watched him hold a gun to her head and tell her he was,
Yeah. There was no doubt that
I fully believed this man would. And so he let it out that I was having an affair, and I just rolled with it. So that was rough. My parents were, imagine me and my mom, we got into a physical altercation over that, and the police showed up. But I just until this last year and a half, after 3.5 years of counseling and working through those things, have I been able to come to my family and I actually called my ex-husband and told him about it. Like, I wasn't able to talk about it. I've held it in. I've gone through counseling. I've worked through this, but I felt I needed to call and tell you I was never having an affair on you. I was raped, and he told me I've known since then that something about that whole situation wasn't right. Like, something was telling me that that was not the full truth of what was going on.
Right.
And he forgave me, and so you've got kind of the trauma of of being molested when I was a child, his addiction, being raped. I was just, I didn't really know where to turn. And when I moved in with my friend, and she was just pills at the time, I was like, I want to just, let me try that. Let me,
Some sort of
because
coping.
you just, I didn't know. And I did pray, but I feel like I was not in the mind state to have the right mindset to even hear from God at that point. I was lost. I was very, very lost. I was in a dark spot.
Yeah, so can you talk to the young women that are listening that have had some sort of trauma, right? Things that have happened, because I think it's more than we think, of people that have went through those things. Can you talk about the importance of getting help? Some therapy, counselors, because I think this is somewhat of a taboo thing. Like, I don't think enough people look into these things at an age before. I think they use other things as coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Instead of. So can you talk a little bit about, to any young woman or young lady out there, for anybody in general that is going through that, like, can you talk about your experience of, because we know your experience of not going to counseling and using other things to cope. Can you talk about how counseling has helped you in your journey, or therapy has helped you in your journey?
It helped me tremendously. She kind of unlocked those things that I buried so deep. Just holding it in is it's so damaging in so many ways, to just hold that in and not talk about it. But you're embarrassed, and you've so much shame and guilt that comes with that. The unworthiness, you just feel so degraded, and just, so I understand why they don't talk about it. But it's definitely not the way, like, just talking about it is, that's the only way I've gotten through that, just, and it was hard to even talk to my counselor about it. I won't lie, she started asking questions that made her, and my responses, she was able to pull it out of me.
Right.
Like, your responses, what happened? What happened to you? Like, you're not being fully open.
Right.
I know there's more. And so I finally did open up and tell her, and she really did help me work through that, and gave me the courage to go and talk to my family. And she is a godsend. That lady has.
Yeah. So recommend it
Has
to
been.
everybody. Hey,
Yes.
Yeah, everybody needs to go to counseling.
Yes.
Are you looking at me?
Because you've often said,
Jennifer.
I'm never going to counseling.
Okay.
Sorry, we're talking about
For
Krista.
everybody else.
I said that
For
too for a
everybody
very
else.
long time. I said that for a very long time. I'm not going to counseling. Why do I need to go sit and talk to someone about my problems? They can't fix it.
Yeah.
They can't fix it. I'm not going.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so we're in the midst of addiction. It's getting, at least what I remember. So I mean, it was getting to the point where, I mean, you're losing your kids over it, right? Like it's at a point now where the addiction, you're remarried, you have your kids, and it's like,
Yes. So
again,
we
from the
had,
perspective of Paul and Tracy, like when we were talking to them, like they were, I don't know if they had them, or just having them more often. I can't remember exactly, but it had got to the point where we were praying, but then it's like, okay, now we took I don't say took, that's not true. Now we have, I think, the kids.
So we were at me and my husband at the time and the twins' dad, because we had the twins. We were in addiction. I found out I was pregnant. I quit everything, stayed sober my whole pregnancy. He did not. So when they were born, I went right back into it. And then I had, they were born in March, and then in September, I had to have a major surgery. And from me being in addiction as bad as I was, my body was not healing. So I had 4 emergency surgeries after that initial surgery. The doctors told me on my 3rd surgery, they told me after they had to literally completely cut me hip bone to hip bone, we can't even sew your tissues. It's like sewing saran wrap. You are so malnourished that you're not healing. Like they really didn't even know if I would make it.
I remember that.
And then I ended up 10 hours later back in emergency surgery with a large blood clot. But even then, do you think it scared me? No. I was hooked up to a dilaudid IV drip, and I was shooting heroin in the bathroom in the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
That's
I
how
remember
much
Tracy telling the
addiction
story.
just
I remember part of the
takes-
story, but I never knew that. It's like, oh
it
my
just
gosh.
takes over you. Like it rules your entire life. Your whole life is revolved around that. So we went to the street fair, and I saw 2 of my high school friends that ran a program that I had used with, and they had gone to programs, and they had gotten sober, and they were running a program, and one of them was like, I'm going to reach out to you. I haven't seen you forever. I want to hang out. And I'm like, okay. And, and she did. She reached out to me and called me one Wednesday and asked if I would come over and have coffee at the house where the program was. And I was like, yeah, I'll come over and have coffee. So we're sitting on the front porch, and of course I was high, and she knows that I'm high. She did it for long enough.
Right.
She
She
knows.
knows the
Yeah,
signs,
she
yeah.
knows. And she's like, all right, just tell me what's going on. Like, what are you doing? And I opened up and I told her, and she called the other friend that was the director of the program, and she showed up, and she's like, you've got to get sober, and we'll be praying for you, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, thanks. And they're like, we're going to church tonight. Will you go with us? And I'm like, that was the last thing that I wanted to do.
Right.
But I did it because I felt like I was going to let them down if I didn't. So I went to church with them that Wednesday night. I got high before I went to church, and that is the moment that I had my first encounter with God. Like, God completely wrecked me right there at church that night. I made the decision I was going into the program. Like, that night, I was going into the program. And I went home, and I walked in the door, and my ex-husband looked at me and was like, what happened to you? It's like you could even just see. And I told him, like, I'm going into this program. So we came up with a plan. I'm going to go to rehab. He was going to go to the methadone clinic and keep the kids. And then once I was done with rehab, he would go to rehab and I would keep the kids. So that was our plan. We were going to tell our families about it the next day. So we show up at my mom's house to tell our families. And yeah, that went not the way we thought that it was going to go.
I remember that.
Definitely not the way we thought it was going to go. Needless to say, yes, our kids got taken by our family. We both went into rehab. We were there 2.5, 3 months, and we left. Felt like I had gained a lot of knowledge in there. I had grown a relationship with God on a deeper level than I ever had. And then a friend came over and brought the drugs, and we relapsed. And it was a relapse of, it lasted 2.5, 3 months. And it's like I was doing heroin, and then I was smoking crack. Like, I'd never smoked crack. Like, so where'd this come in? I don't know. It just, there it was, and I did it. Like, what am I doing? So me and Adam decided, okay, this is it. We're done. We're quitting. And we were on day 3. It was on a Sunday. We were sick. The kids were laid down for a nap. We were trying to nap because we were sick and trying to get through these withdrawals again. In rehab, that alone, the sickness that I went through was like, it's indescribable. When I went into rehab, I weighed 97 pounds. When I came out, I weighed 130. I ate so much when I was in there. But, yes, we're napping on Sunday afternoon, and my phone rings, and it's my mom, and I'm not answering. She just keeps calling. I'm like, I'm going to have to answer it. She asked me we're trying to take a nap. It's Sunday afternoon. We're taking a nap. And she said, come downstairs. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, come downstairs. I was like, okay. And I hang the phone up, and I'm like, they know. And we go downstairs, and my living room is full of people. My parents, in-laws, the director of the program that we had just left, the men and the women's, their significant others, their mom. I mean, my whole living room was full. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, you guys all just stopping by for a visit? What's going on? And yeah, that one was the first time that we told our families. My parents were angry, and his parents were more understanding and supportive. And then the second time the roles reversed, my parents were more understanding, and his were not at all. I was told that day my kids were going to be taken from me, and I would never see them again, and that I should have, they wished that I would have overdosed and died. And that's when my dad stood up and was like, get out of my daughter's house. This is, so my parents kept the kids for 2 weeks, and we haven't, I'm saying me, I have not used since then, and that was January 8th of 2017.
Awesome.
So I've got 7 years that I've
Good for
been
you.
sober.
Yeah.
So
So you're celebrating. I mean, again,
Yes.
so you're going through life, and because this is the thing that, every time I think of your story, these are the things that always are like, man, I really need to pray for her, because it's like, here's a huge celebration, man. You're sober, your kids are back, things are going good, you're making up for lost time, all these great things are happening. I'm pretty sure I have this timeline right, but preaching on a Sunday morning, Beth Stevens walks up, hey, you need to pray, you know, had a bicycle wreck, you know, this is going down, you know, and everybody at the time, were you there on that Sunday morning?
I was downstairs. I wasn't up
Either
there at
way,
the time,
and I'm
but I was here.
like, okay, we'll be praying. And they're like, no, now. I mean, it was the first time ever. Like, we just stopped the service, and I don't think anybody was thinking, oh, he had a bicycle wreck.
That's new to me. I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, we stopped the whole service. I said, because you could just see it. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, hey, like he broke his arm.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking if somebody, they walked up right in the middle of my preaching. They just walked right down the aisle and said, this is what happened. You need to pray.
And that had to be the Holy Spirit, because people aren't going to do that. You get text messages, you need to pray for somebody, but she had to have that feeling that you need to go up there, you know, and
Yeah.
Tracy came up to me. I
Is that
remember it.
okay?
I was running sound that day. She's like, "You got to go up there. You got to tell Mike. He's got to start praying." And
Was it you that came up? I can't remember.
I didn't come up because I'm like, again, I didn't think it was
like, we can't interrupt the service.
Yeah, I'm not going to interrupt the service. For
Yeah.
that. And then I think, I wasn't even sure who went up. I was like, oh no.
I think it was Beth,
Mm.
but
It quite possibly could have been, because she would. They're
yeah. So
very
we
close.
stopped the service and prayed. I don't even remember if I could preach it afterwards or not. I just don't remember, but I will never remember. I mean, never forget that moment, because, and even at the time, like I'm texting your mom and dad afterwards, and like, what, you know, hey.
Well, you
So
just would have been texting her
my
mom,
mom.
because
Oh,
Paul
that's
passed
right.
away 6 months
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, 6 months before.
well
That's
about
what it
or so.
was.
Five?
it was.
Yeah, so I did have the timeline wrong. So you
A
lost
little
your
bit,
dad
first.
Yes, so
before
dad
that happened.
Dad passed away in January, the very end of January, January 27th, and then Carson was June 16th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I did have it wrong. So your dad did, because your dad had came on staff,
Yeah.
you know, and was working here, and yeah, I mean, weirdest thing ever is like he just goes from being completely great and fine to having a backache, and then yeah,
2 weeks.
craziness.
That day that with Dad, I went to Mom's to visit, and she said, your dad, it was on I think it was a Monday or a Tuesday, your dad had the flu over the weekend. I can't really get him like up and going. And she said, go up and check on him. I went up, and he's sitting in the bed, and he's eating an apple. I'm like, what? How are you, Dad? What's going on? He was like, oh, I'm all right. I'm feeling better. And he starts kind of rooting around, looking around. I'm like, what are you looking for? And he's like, oh, I was eating an apple. And I'm like, the apple's in his hand. I'm like, it's in your hand, Dad. He did the same thing with his glasses. They were on his face. And I went downstairs and told Mom, we need to take him to the hospital. Something's just not right. So she got someone to come over to run the daycare. We get him to the hospital, and they started the testing, and he was, my sister had worked in the ER there in the Huntington Hospital, so she knew the nurses, and one of the nurses pulled her and I to the side and said, you know that we're not supposed to do this, but I know you, and I'm going to tell you, prepare yourself. And so we kind of knew it wasn't good. So he was transferred then to Parkview North. He went in on the 15th. On the 17th, we found out that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and he passed away on the 27th.
Ugh.
So it was just like, you have your dad, and then just like that, he's gone.
Yeah, so what was the time frame from being sober to your dad dying?
So January
Method
of
has to be accurate.
2017, and he passed away January of 2019.
Yeah.
So
So
it's
again, back
just-
to like you're
just over
celebrating, but then
2
here comes
years.
another thing.
Yeah.
You know, your dad dying, and then it can't get worse.
That's what, yeah,
Right.
that's what I thought.
I mean,
Like,
you lose
yeah,
your father,
like
it
it
can't
can't
get-
get worse. And drugs never even entered my mind. Like I think God just really protected me in that area. Because I was angry. I was angry, and yeah, just the anger that came with that. But I that anger didn't even compare to the anger that came in June.
Yeah, and losing a son.
Yeah, that that's a different. I was angry. That was on Father's Day of 2019. I got the phone call. We were out to brunch with Adam's family, and Carson was in Rockford, Illinois with his dad at a national BMX race. And he said, "Hey, Carson wrecked." And I said, "Oh, great," because it wasn't Carson wrecked. He had wrecked. He'd broken his arms. He'd
Right.
lacerated his spleen. He's
Yeah.
all the things. He has wrecked. I'm like, okay. And he's like, I was like, "How bad is it?" And he was like, "Well, he really wrecked." And I'm like, okay. And at this point, I stand up and I walk outside. And I'm like, okay, how bad is it? And he says to me, he just started to sob. And through his weeping, he said, "They're doing CPR on him." And he just kept saying, "Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. You can pull through. Come on, buddy. Come on." And I dropped to the ground, and I was screaming. And they heard it from inside, and Adam came running out. I was like, "We've got to go right now. Get in the car. We got to go. Carson wrecked. They're doing CPR. We got to go." Rockford's like 4.5, 5-hour drive. So we get in the car. Chandler's like, I'm coming with you. So he gets in the car. Adam's family takes the twins. I call my mom, my sister, my brother. They all get together. They're on their way there. I had some other friends that got in their car immediately and started driving. And I was calling Jake every 5 minutes. "What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?" And he's like, "He's still in surgery. I don't know anything. He's still in surgery. I don't know anything." But he also had officers sitting there saying, "She's driving. Do
Yeah,
not
you
tell.
can't
Do
say.
not tell her. We don't want there to be another accident." And about 3 hours into the drive, his mom called me and told me he didn't make it. And those are, I think, screams that haunt a lot of people. I know they do Jake's family, because they were all there on the phone when they called me. I know it still haunts Adam and Chandler both. We had to pull over. I was starting to pass out. That anger that came with his death, just, I cussed God out.
Yeah.
I was, how could a good God do this? How could a good God take a child? It didn't make sense to me.
Right.
But through my grief and going through just the process of the healing and starting counseling, and I was praying one night, just like I was yelling at him. You don't, like, why would you do this? I don't understand. Like, and I heard him say to me, "I do understand, because I willingly gave my son for you." And that is what gave me a peace that I know where he is. I had teachers from the high school that came through his line at the viewing. I don't remember a lot. I was in a fog, but I do remember this one specific teacher came and said that Carson was in his debate class. And he said, he is one that I will never forget. I felt like I had to come because he is a student that I will never forget. He said he stood in front of the class and he debated that God was real. And he said he had Bible verses and, I mean, scripture. He was backing it with he said kids were coming at him with everything. And he was snapping off Bible verses. And he's like, he's one that I know where he is.
Yeah.
He was not afraid to share his faith. Just like with Luke Riggers, I don't know if you remember him getting baptized. Carson had invited him here for youth group, and just seeing, that he made an impact, and I've accepted that maybe God was saving him from something far worse, and he did make an impact while he was here. And he's okay. And I know that I'll see him again.
Yeah.
And it's God that's got me through all of that. I mean, without him, I'd have been right back in addiction. But it just has never even crossed my mind. God has really sustained me.
Yeah, so we're towards the end. So think through this. For anybody listening to the story, obviously you can see you have ran the gamut of tragedy, and you have experienced things that, I mean, even us from the outside, it's like, I mean, did you really have to go through that much?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, isn't one thing enough? Like, but one of the things, I encourage you this, and I'm not the only person who's ever said this to you, but obviously there are no words. I mean, I've always said that to people. There aren't good words to say to anybody that's been in tragedy, because it's still tragedy.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the things that happen still have pain. And all of those things that you went through have the things that just you still live with. I mean, they're just things that you don't care what anybody says. As healed as you can be, you still live with
Yes.
some of the tragedy that has been allowed to be a part of your life. But my encouragement, or I guess my looking from the outside, is that it's pretty amazing to me that the tests that you've went through, that you've come out on the other side faithful. So good job. I mean,
Thank you.
That, again, it's one thing for even a person to go through one tragedy and come on the outside faithful.
Yeah.
To go through multiple tragedies and come out on the outside tested and more faithful. I just want to say, I'm proud of you,
Thank you.
and that there must be something huge either going on or coming in your life from a witness standpoint, from somebody that's going to listen to this and hear, because as much as it doesn't make any sense, God doesn't allow anything to happen that doesn't make any sense. He's going to use something out of those things that,
Right.
and I'm sure has, like in all of those things. But if you could give advice to people today that are struggling through, they're trying to get out of the pit, they're trying to get out of, because that is what happens. I mean, when tragedy happens, there's a hole that is hard to climb out of sometimes. And so if you were going to give advice to, because you can speak it on all levels. I mean, we're not just talking about somebody who lost a son or lost a father or at a lot of levels, you've worked through tragedy. Any advice that you would give to people that, worked for you in whether it was we've already said therapy, if it's friends, if it's, whatever those things are, were there things that you can point to and say, like, these were things that helped me get out of the pit?
Definitely staying connected with like-minded people of where you're trying to get to. Stay connected with people. My best friend that I told you that I used with had ended up in prison. She's completely flipped her life around. Jeff and Andrea.
Ah.
Yes, they're stay connected with those people for the encouragement that when you're going through something, you can go and talk to them, and they're going to speak life into you. And dig into God's word and listen. Just listen. I hear people tell me, I've heard this so many times from people, you're so strong. You are so strong. And my response is, I'm not. I'm not strong. I'm weak, but I have a strong God, and that's how I'm getting through it.
That's good stuff.
You just, I pray every day, all day. I clean. That's my job, cleaning. I have worship music on in my ears all day, and I worship and I pray just all day. I pray over beds that I make. It's just really keeping that relationship or digging into that relationship with God and listening. I feel like a lot of people try, but there's never that just listening. God will speak to you, but you have to be willing to listen.
Yeah. I think it's so cool when you say that. I mean, it's made me think through, like, the reason you can recognize a strong God is because you can recognize a weak self. You know what I mean? So many times we try to be strong, and I think we miss how great God is because we're propping ourselves up. But when you can just recognize, you know what, we're not that strong.
Yeah.
But we do have a God that can prop us up. I think that's
Yeah.
so good. And the other thing you said, surrounding yourself with like-minded people that can speak life into you, that is number one, be a person who will speak life into people. Like that, we need those people who are willing to go on a journey and speak life when people need it, and that you would take the time to be able to surround yourself with those people. And I think ending with that idea, like, it's pretty powerful to think through the process of, you're probably right, we don't listen enough. That we need to take some time, that we don't always have to be speaking it, but let's let him speak it to us to be able to give us, because he knows, right? Like,
Yeah.
as hard as it is to think of, because these are the things I would always think of, like, really, God, I don't mean this bad, but you kind of suck in this, like, that didn't, well, you know what I mean? When it doesn't work, I'm
No,
like,
it doesn't. No, you're actually,
God,
you're
come
right. You're
on,
right.
like,
Yeah, no.
I
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah,
hear
you're-
from a God that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I had to get over part of that to be able to get back to the point of, no, like, you're what I need.
Soaking is one of my favorite things to do. Turning on worship music and sitting and just listening to God.
No.
I mean, by the end of it, I'm weeping every time.
Yeah.
But he just lays things on my heart, and I'll pray for people that God will lay on my heart, and soaking is one of my, that's what I call it, soaking. I don't know. That's one of my favorite things to do, and I just really just press in and just get in his presence, and that's what changes you.
Yeah.
Is his presence, yeah. He will do awesome things if you would just keep pressing.
Yeah. Well, Krista, thank you so much for, I mean, again, number one, having the courage. I mean, I think it takes a lot of courage to come on and relive. You know what I mean? Relive your life like that. That's but we've always said, every time you tell a story, there's somebody that's out there that's being impacted. And I know that. Like, for people that are listening that are going to hear your story and say, like, that part of it, that's me, and I needed to hear this and hear those encouraging, and to see, honestly, I think for some people to see there's light at the end of the tunnel. If you can make it through, you know what I mean? If you can make it past, like, there are people that are listening, like, you need to look at Krista and be like, understand, like, you can make it. Like, you can get to there is another side.
Yes.
There is a mountain outside of the valley. There is a God that walks through both the valley and the mountain, but there's the valley is not endless. You know, and you can get to the end of it. And I think people
And
can
sometimes
see that.
it can feel like it is, but just keep going.
Yeah. Just keep walking. So first of all, thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming
for-
on and having the courage to be able to share your story. And if you're watching, you know, or listening, make sure when this comes out that you like, share, or comment. We'd love for this story to be able to get on more people's feeds and more opportunities. And again, just comment, share encouraging words, you know, whatever those things are. But by sharing it, you know, the story can go out into many people's lives and many people can hear that. If you ever see Krista, come up and say hi, whether it's here at church or out in the community, you know, because you're still living around and close and yeah, good. So if you ever see her, come up and say hi. But again, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh.